Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Hope everyone is having a great start to the week. We have a very important topic to discuss today, end of year strategies. So today we're going to talk a little bit about how to keep your donors engaged and giving. So this is the most important time of the whole year for nonprofits, and we want to share with you some really helpful insights from our partners at Cloud for Good and also over at CARE. So we'll be recording this webinar. You'll be getting this within the next few days, and we'll also be sending you some additional resources. So I want to go ahead and do some introductions. My name is Carly Evans. I'm the Senior Nonprofits Partnerships Manager here over at the Giving Block. Previously to coming here, I was a development professional working in fundraising, a few various nonprofits, and I know how important this last few months of the year stretches. So I'm just really excited to have this conversation, and I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Angie at CARE.
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Angie Moore. I am the Chief Individual Fundraising Officer at CARE USA. We're headquartered in Atlanta. I've been here about 7 years, but I've been around for a long time, if you can't tell by the gray hair. Although I like to say that I started when I was 12. I run an area at CARE, which is all donors below $10,000. Fundraising across all channels.
Thanks, Angie. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen Keister. I'm the Director of Partner Alliances at Cloud for Good. So I have the privilege of kind of being the middle between all of our great partners like the Giving Block and all of our phenomenal customers like CARE. And we're just going to be talking about that bridge today and how everyone is using all the technology for end of year giving.
Thank you, Kristen. All right, so basically what we're going to do here is briefly touch on end of year and why it matters. So the most obvious reason here is that 31% of all donations are received in December, with the most volume that's coming in the last 3 days of the year. A lot of these donors are racing to get their donations in before the clock strikes midnight on December 31. Guaranteeing to get their gifts in time to get that tax deductibility for 2023. Another interesting stat here is 12 times more donors are required on Giving Tuesday than any other day of the year. So please don't forget to be active on social media on this day. I know a lot of nonprofits think there might be too much noise going on in the space. That's definitely not the case. So that statistic alone should be sure that you are creating some sort of engagement strategy for social media and a proper plan to activate on Giving Tuesday. And that's going to be here right before you know it. Another interesting thing, 22% of lapsed donors are more likely to renew their support during the holiday season. So make sure not to leave these donors behind. Kristen will talk here in a little bit more about segmenting, but this group has a big potential for end of year. And then finally, social media campaigns in December have potential to engage 5 times more supporters. So you have more eyeballs looking at your content this last month of the year, and you want to encourage to make it interesting and impactful. You really want to compel these donors to give, or if they're new, learn more about your mission. Our agenda real quick here, we're going to talk about the need to diversify your engagement strategies by tapping into new donor demographics. Then we're going to help you understand your audience a bit better for engagement. And then we'll hear a little bit more from Angie of how CARE is putting this all together, as well as kind of picking Angie's brain as we go a little bit more about the good work that they're doing over there. All right, so let's briefly go over where we are right now. So as we head into giving season, there's no surprise that giving is down this year. I'm sure a lot of you nonprofits are feeling that. This roughly translates to about actually 10.5% if you include inflation. So there's still a lot of fears of recession out there, and we're seeing that a lot of people want to keep their cash on hand. So donor pools are shrinking. Nonprofits have more lapsed donors this year than other years. And the donors that have stuck around, from the data at least that we've been seeing, have actually been giving more. What that does is increase your average gift size, and donors have been more generous than previous years, which is really a great thing to kind of make up for that. And the next point is the importance of diversifying your engagement strategy to tap into those new donor demographics. So If you do have that shrinking donor pool, then you need to make sure you're looking into acquiring new donors. For example, at the Giving Block, we've helped raise over 150 million in crypto, specifically from, I would say, mostly younger individuals. These are donors that are Gen Z and millennials. They are tech savvy, they're financially literate, they're also very active on social media. This is a group you don't want to leave behind when you're segmenting, and you just want to make sure you're meeting these donors where they're at and enabling them to give in the ways that they want to. So especially with the great wealth transfer that's coming up, when you have an estimated $80 trillion that's going to be changing into the hands of Gen X, Millennial, and Gen Z. So where I'm going with this is I want you to start thinking a little bit more outside of the box and thinking of your donors and strategy in a different way. So the first thing that I'm going to do is ask Angie, so along with diversifying into new donor demographics, what are some other strategies that CARE has explored to help increase your end of year giving campaigns?
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I do want to comment on the tapping into new donor areas, including the non-cash, is that my team actually, we are measured almost 100% by how much money we raise, and of course all the net LTV and all the things that go along with that. But we also on my team have a position related to specifically crypto, and the focus in this area for us. And I especially think it's clear at the holidays that you've got to make sure that your donors that want to give through these types of giving tools, they can find you on your website. Hopefully your paid search is updated. And so that if somebody wants to find us at CARE under International Relief with Crypto, please don't go search that right now, because I need to make sure my search strategy is up to date. But the goal is that you're meeting people where they are, right? You might want everybody to give on a credit card, but that's just not going to work for everybody. And so you've got to make sure that if somebody comes to your website, they absolutely know they can give with crypto if they want to. So make sure that as you are focusing, if you are focusing on where the bulk of your donors live at the end of the year, which I know many of us do, we have to, that you're also having that front door available for people who want to give in different ways, whether it's DAF, stock, et cetera. So I wanted to say that. Now about the diversifying donors and other strategies. So I will tell you, and I think from talking to a lot of my peers in the industry, everybody's hurting a little bit right now. You know, we've had softness since probably the end of May, 1st of June. And, you know, we're beating last year, but if that's, you know, who budgets flat, right? So we're beating last year, but that doesn't mean we're making our projections for this year because we're on a July 1st fiscal year. And so the one thing that you would always do, obviously, and you see it on the bottom of the slide here, is, you know, you want to make sure you understand who your donors are. You want to make sure that if you've got a pocket of people that only give at end of the year, this is your time with them. Make sure you're treating them differently than somebody who gives a couple of times throughout the year. So make sure you understand why people are giving to you and when they're giving to you. The other piece is, you know, if you're in my organization, we have a lot of different elements of our mission that we talk to people about. We have humanitarian work and emergency response, but we also have areas that are specific to what we call water and wash, you know, clean hygiene, things like that. Then we have hunger, et cetera. So also take the time, if you have a database, we're lucky that we do. And we actually, I'll be honest, we actually work with both Cloud for Good and the Giving Block, but we have a database that allows us to look at what people are giving to. So there are lots of ways that you can break down and just think of them as more than just the traditional RFM donors. But I did want to comment on one thing, and I promise I'll let us go to the next slide in a second. This year is so unusual. And if you're sitting on this call and you go, yeah, we've been soft for a couple of months now. And for us, it's been across multiple channels. It hasn't, you know, we have years where direct mail does great and digital's not great. And so one is sort of taking care of the other one. This year, we've had softness in more than just one channel. And so the one thing that I think we all have to do is what's that saying where you say being an idiot or ignorant is when you do the same thing that you've always done, but you expect a different outcome. I'm sure I totally butchered that, but don't go into your holiday. If your controls are not working right now and they haven't worked for the last 60 days, don't go into the holiday thinking that the season's going to change that. So make sure that you have, and one of the things that we've done at CARE is we've created trigger points. We've got a trigger point, for example, on November 13th that says if the first part of our November stuff is not working, maybe we need to rethink how we do Giving Tuesday. We've got one in December too, which is if the first half of the December is not working and we've got a leading indicators we look at, maybe we need to rethink what we're doing for the second half of December. So don't get caught the day after Giving Tuesday or the day before Giving Tuesday going, wow, things are not working out. What should we do? Go ahead and plan for that. It's the safest thing you could do. It's probably the best thing you could do to help your staff out too. Anyway, I just wanted to comment on that because it's a different way of thinking about it. It's more of a creative conversation, but it really matters because the segmenting your donors are one thing. And, you know, a lot of people believe that segmenting and data is 90% of the success and creative is only 10%, but that 10% is a big deal at the end of the year. So make sure you don't forget about that part.
Yeah, absolutely. Kristen, I'd love you to talk just a little bit more about how to define those audiences and then strategies around each segment.
Absolutely. All right, so think of this as just kind of like a mini agenda here of what I'd love to talk about. So we're gonna dive into what I would consider like 3 core steps to thinking about that creative part that Angie just said, right? Like we just throwing out some inspirational ideas of some different ways that you could tackle this. I want to talk about defining your audiences. So if one message doesn't fit all anymore, we need to think about who are the audiences that we're trying to reach. And we'll talk about some different ways of looking at those. And then we want to talk about the data strategy. I think that sometimes people feel like this is a paralyzing step, right? If the first place you start is, I can't possibly do anything until my data is clean, you will never be able to take that first step. So yes, the data strategy needs to think about data cleanup and ongoing data hygiene, but I really think that there's a way to put a foot forward around data collection and the decisions that you make about how you're going to use that data that you're collecting. And then we'll talk about the engagement strategy, which ties so closely to the data strategy, because sometimes it's how did I get this data point about a donor? And that's going to drive how I engage with them. So Carly, if we can go to the next slide here. I just want to talk about audiences and looking at their profiles first. So in this example, the Giving Block team actually was able to show this data on 2 different audiences. On the left-hand side, you see a traditional donor that's engaging through those like website giving pages. And on the right-hand side, you'll see an average crypto donor profile. When you start looking at your audiences and the data points that you gather on them, don't look at this as like apples to apples comparison. The point is not to look at this and say, wow, crypto gives me a better or a larger donation, I should spend all my time there. The point is to understand the nuances of all your different donor groups, what makes each one unique, so that you have an effective strategy for each one of them, right? Like just like Angie said, we can't put all our eggs in the direct mail basket and forget about social media. It's the same thing with audiences. We need to make sure that our strategy is right for each audience, and we're applying that across the board. So in this example, age seems to be a very important data point. Average income may play an important part, but like what's not reflected here is the data that you might not be able to gather about a crypto donor, right? Traditionally, they tend to be a little bit more anonymous. They might not share personal information through like my name or my email address. I might not share anything at all and be completely anonymous through the donation process. So that's very important to understand, because it could be a larger donation, but I don't have a way to engage with them in the same traditional ways. So therefore, I can't spend as much time doing that. Or I need to get creative on my strategy and figure out how I can engage with them differently. So as you guys are putting together your audiences, I just wanted to throw out like a couple different ones to think about. And Angie, please, pipe in here as well. We think a lot about donors who volunteer, and they have that deeper tie to your organization. So looking at them as a different audience, or maybe volunteers who have yet to donate, but obviously care because they spend enough personal time with you. If you're an organization that offers a service that someone could be a recipient of, particularly like in healthcare, right? You might be like a grateful patient. So as someone been a recipient of your services and a donor, we would target them differently. Or maybe someone who's received services but hasn't donated yet. We can think about defining audiences by the platform in which they engage. So because you interacted with me through the website or through social media or responded to in a direct mail, that would put you in a different audience. You could define them by people who donate through their employer, or at least have an employer match, because then you want to have a completely separate program to interact with the employer on. Or like the ones Carly was sharing earlier, you could think about anyone who donates through a non-cash asset, right? It doesn't have to just be crypto. I think the most important part of this is that a donor is not just in one specific audience. So I could interact with you in a certain way. I could have interacted with you, 2 years ago and donated, not donated last year. I'm going to fall into multiple micro groups, and that's what's important about defining those audiences.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kristen, I was just going to jump in, and I was going to say, so we've actually just come through an interesting segmentation strategy that we actually worked on with Cloud for Good. And this is when if I was in a room with all of you, I would be looking at your faces to see who has found themselves in the same situation that we found ourselves in. But what we had was we have a little bit of a tiered program. Right. So for us, we have the top of our, remember, I'm $10,000 and below. So at CARE, above 10,000 is a major gift. So the top of the area that I work in is called the President's Circle. The next level down is called the Inner Circle. The next level down is called Core. But then you have the monthly givers that run throughout. And those are our Partners for Change. And what we realized over the last year, as we decided to, because the number of channels we use has grown and grown and grown and grown. And, just like Kristen was talking about, people fall into micro groups. They can fall into a channel-based group. They can fall into an RFM-based group. They can fall into all different kinds of groups. But one of the things that we prioritized was our tiering. We said, look, we have to get the tiering right. And sadly, I will never forget the day that we were in a meeting where all of a sudden I looked at my team and I was like, well, what are you doing with the inner circle people? And what are you doing with the non-inner circle people? And what became really clear is that they all had different definitions of what an inner circle person was. It's like, oh, no. So because you don't have the same definition and everybody was using it as a part of their marketing instructions, we quickly realized that some of our best donors, especially the difference between an inner circle and a President's Circle, could actually be getting both experiences because the inner circle people were using a different definition than the President's Circle. So we've spent the last 3 months, 4 months, probably first month internally, solidifying our definitions of our segments. And then we actually said, people come and go in your organization. Agency people come and go. Database people come and go. We can't rely on historical knowledge. And honestly, the fact that it was in a Word document 2 years ago that said, this is our strategy, it wasn't helping us. And we were actually really messing up the donor experience because not everybody was using the same language. So we actually went to the step, and I feel really good about it. It just got completed, where we actually, I say we, but it was really Cloud for Good. You guys took what we say in our business language and we actually made it a part of our database. Now, in this case, you can only be in one segment. Now, the minute you do something from a behavior perspective, you give a higher gift, or you don't give a higher gift, you can be kicked out or moved up, and it's automatic in the system. And I will tell you, I think that it's taken a lot of pressure off of our strategy because we're less worried about data instructions and we're more worried about providing the best communication experience. So I wanted to share that as part of it, because part of it is making sure that everybody, we try to be out of silos, but sometimes, the email people may be thinking differently than the direct mail people, thinking differently than the telemarketing people. So you have to make sure you've got the same dictionary and the same language and the same data definitions.
No, that's fantastic, Angie. And because you guys are so strong in your data points, I think it allows you to then say, if we wanted to take inner circle and
Yep.
break them into subgroups just for a specific campaign, you can.
Yep.
But at least you're working off that same base.
Well, and to be honest with you, we just went through that because now that we feel really comfortable that our segments are literally coded properly in our database, and guys, we have Salesforce NPSP is what we have. And because we now are comfortable that they're coded properly, we're now moving into, especially with Inner Circle, which is sort of, part of our Inner Circle group gets a very personalized touch and part of them don't. So now is when we get to dip down into the lower level information and say, who only has phone capacity, who only has email capacity? If 40% of our folks are only email capacity, are we giving the best email experience? Because it allows you to start look at those lower levels and then tier your strategy as well.
Fantastic. Carly, if we can go to the next slide, I think that's actually a perfect transition. So thinking about those data points, I wanted to talk about two different ways of looking at this. Very traditional data points that we see organizations gather and what they do with it. And then we'll talk about more modernized ones here. So I think these are very tied together, right? When you're thinking about your data strategy, I think if there's one best practice I can convey, it's don't collect data unless you're going to use it. I know that sounds basic and obvious, but I can't believe how much data sometimes people are collecting that they don't have any reason for. It's not driving engagement. It's not driving their segmentation. I would also really implore you to think about making sure that your constituents do not have to type in data that you already have collected about them. At a very basic level, like at a form, this could be done with something like form assembly, right? It populates the fields automatically once the donor has been identified. So maybe that's they typed in their email, and as they tabbed through it, it can check the database and bring forward everything else you already know into that form. It could be done at a much more mature level through something like a customer community, like Salesforce Experience Cloud, that lets them log in and then interact with you on a very personalized environment where they could see their donor history or take some past donation and duplicate it quickly. But I think the idea here is that the donors are always more likely to give you more information and help you fill in the blanks about what you're trying to gather from them if they don't have to be retyping anything. A really good example of that is just figuring out where they work, right? Starting to gather employer information can help you down that path of employer match. But if I got to retype my last name, I'm not going to bother telling you something new. So just really think about the basics of that data strategy and how you're gathering the data. On the left-hand side, you'll see some of the data points that we see, kind of, I would call them traditional data points. So something like giving history, right? And all of the reports that everyone gathers on when's the last time they gave. External data, I know that often includes all that wealth screening information that you're bringing in, like income and propensity to donate, and then engagement activity, right? All of these data points can help that right-hand side of how am I going to engage. So we talked about donor tiers, that giving history, maybe what drives that donor tiers, where each one has a different engagement plan. The wealth screening may help drive which campaign a donor is targeted for. And then that engagement activity is things like, when's the last time they interacted with us on our website, responded to emails, volunteered, right? All of that basic engagement activity can help you say, what platform should I be interacting with them in return? Because I'm able to say how they interact with us. One really interesting note from our team is we're seeing geographic location be a real legacy data point that's not having a major effect on the engagement strategies. That could be very post-COVID as people have started to roam more or been at home and not in the office, but we're seeing geographic location kind of be phased out. Angie, anything you want to add to that?
No, I would just tap on and say that absolutely on the geographic piece, it used to be, and there are really two things that used to be really, really big for us. One was age. It's still big, but in very specific ways. We use age very, very much in a plan giving strategy. And I don't mean, just the classic of asking if you want to put somebody in the will, because there are key milestones along the way when somebody's thinking about family planning and estate planning, et cetera. And it's about serving up the right information at the right age. So
Right.
age has still been one of those ones that we keep heavy track of, but it affects the mass audience communication strategy less than it used to. There was a prior slide that talked about the average age of the traditional, I think it was the online donor was like 65 that you had up. You know what? When I started, that was like 75. So the fact that it's lowered, and that's primarily due to the different channels that have come into play, age is less of a driver unless you want to start talking about the capacity to give a certain level gift, and then age does become a driver. But the geography piece doesn't even, we used to do strategies around geography, and we don't do that anymore.
Very interesting.
Yeah. Yep.
And Carly, you mentioned the great wealth transfer earlier. I am core Gen X, so I'm just waiting for this. Tell my parents though.
It's happening. I mean, we're going to start seeing the money changing hands a lot quicker and a lot more of it pretty soon. So,
which may shift that family planning, Angie, right? Like down, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, in the vein of shaking it up a little bit, so Carly, if we can go to the next slide, then we wanted to talk about some inspirational ideas around kind of modernizing those data points. So this could be going far beyond just identifying, hey, what platform do they interact with us on? The first one on the left-hand side, talking about platform activity. There are a lot of tools like this, just because Angie and I are both in the Salesforce world. I'll mention Salesforce Marketing Cloud. That's a suite of tools that lets you start understanding how we should be personalizing a message at a way more granular level, right? Did they last interact with us on mobile or desktop? What time of day are they likely to respond? What social media channels have they interacted on, and what have they clicked as they've been going through our website or going through our social media feeds? Text versus calls. I mean, some amazing things. Like, I think this is where we see nonprofits learn cross industry. So like the other day I was walking by the mall, I walked by the Gap, and immediately my phone pops up like, hi, we see you're near our store. Do you want to come in? We have a special on blah, blah, blah. Imagine pulling that into nonprofit and saying, because you're volunteering with us, and I know you're on site, like if I volunteer at a food bank, I want to be able to hit you up right immediately after that when I know you're in the moment with a donation message. So there's so much of that platform detailed activity tracking that's a wealth of information that can start driving how we're interacting. I will say though, it's like with great power comes great responsibility. It's kind of the same thing here. With the massive information comes a challenge too. So if you think about personally, I donate as Kristen Keister at yahoo.com. And then I'm on social media as Kiki Keister. And then at work, I'm Kristen Keister at Cloud for Good, where, we just did a volunteer VTO day through Cloud for Good, and I donated and volunteered through my employer. How do you get that culminated picture of me, right? So that's called identity resolution. And Salesforce has a tool for that. There's a lot out there that are similar. They have Salesforce Data Cloud. And what that does, it lets you start aggregating the multiple profiles of a single person and tying them all together so that you can see all the data associated with them across all of their different handles and different platforms, and then take action on it based on that identity resolution. So that's about just aggregating and building an even bigger 360 view. And then I think what's really cool, maybe a little bit newer of a concept and even deeper than all of this, is social data. So this is when you really start tracking. Like, you guys know the joke. If I talked about something, it's going to show up on my Instagram feed, right? This social data, because I talked about something, because I clicked on something. Now we're really going to start understanding my true behaviors. I have a really cool story I'll tell you from our direct response team. That's the team that works with Angie and Care on their segmentation. They shared the story with me about a completely different organization. So this nonprofit was involved in a very hot topic political issue at the time, where the supporters on both sides of the issue were extremely passionate. What they chose to do was keep their messaging and keep their website very middle of the road. So don't offend everybody, and just kind of continue that championing the support to get towards resolution of the issue. With that much passion, though, on both sides of the issue, what they saw was the agnostic approach really just alienated both audiences, and fundraising was down significantly. So at this point, they engaged an outside agency, a digital agency, to help them develop an activity tracking strategy. So this is where you go to what you would expect, right? They started tracking when someone gets on the website, where are they visiting, and starting to segment based on that activity. If I click on a certain area of the website, I probably fall into this camp and I can be tailored for this audience. But here's where it gets cool. The deeper testing and all the modeling that they did highlighted that the donors' public actions and their private actions were often very different. It's kind of like saying I support one candidate publicly around all my friends, and then I go into the voting booth and do, completely different because I just was ashamed or I didn't want to voice that in front of my peers. So the deeper analysis of all that social data gave them like a true understanding of the behaviors of the donor profiles. And then they saw the fundraising increase on both sides with that personalized messaging. So I'm very geeked out by the social data. I think that's somewhere where we're going to see everybody going. And I know some people feel that can be a bit creepy, but the effects of that are really going to pay off when you start being able to harness that data. Angie, anything you guys want to add?
No, I just have to say I'm pretty jealous of that nonprofit. So for any of you that are on the call right now saying, wow, that feels like grad school and I feel like my program or my organization is only in middle school, you're not alone. We have a ton of powerful tools at our fingertips. We don't use them all. So the only thing I can give you is, I hear stories like what Kristen just said, and it makes me jealous. Because, it's one of the things you have to watch out for, because you have to make sure that you're at least talking to enough people that can tell you what's possible, versus just staying in your own space. Because of even the identity resolution, I'm just to be honest with you, like we focus a lot on duplicates. Mm-hmm. Right? Because we have a bunch of different platforms that bring people in, and data entry is not always perfect when our donors type their own stuff. And so you end up with duplicates. We've all been there. And, when I think about I was like, we're in duplicate resolution mode. Identity resolution mode is like another one of those really amazing things where you say, wow, wouldn't that be great? I mean, we've all, we all want CRM. We all want that one record of truth and where we could look at the whole 360 degree. And I think we'll get there one day. But it's all very exciting. So I just wanted to say that I'm jealous of that organization.
Talk about AI. And honestly, I feel very similarly about that. We've been looking at a lot of who's attending, AI webinars and learning about AI. And I feel like everyone is in education mode right now. I'm not ready to even voice if this is going to be part of our strategy for next year. I need to educate myself, but that's the balance, right? If we can stay a step ahead on what is possible to keep incorporating it.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So Carly, if we can just go to the next slide, just taking some of that geeking out about thought leadership. These were just some recommendations from people that I know have been in this space and saying like, who do they follow? Who do they get inspired by? So Brene Brown, Daniel Pink, and Adam Grant, we put the websites to all of them. We have no ties to any of them. We just thought if this is something that you wanted to learn more about, all of these folks have great social media, podcasts, and books, depending on your weekend plans. You can dive into those. Awesome. Okay. And then just kind of wrapping this up, if we wanted to look at our key strategies here, I'm going to start in the middle with this, is giving the people what they want. I think, Angie, when you talked about your milestones, this is what I thought of. There is no sense in trying to force something that likely won't work. Be agile, be ready to pivot, have some creative ideas teed up, right? And build those milestones in. Figure out your communities. That's something like that we really are, as you're figuring out these audiences, figure out their communities. Where do you need to engage with them at? Crypto, for an example, as an example, is Discord heavy, right? So that's not something most nonprofits would sit around and think like, oh, what's my Discord strategy? But thinking about where those communities live and tapping into that. And then on the right, no one needs this preached to more than, right? Less than nonprofits is do more with less. But I think just saying, hey, am I doing the basics with routine and with discipline sometimes gets you farther than doing the fancy stuff. So do what you can with what you have. And then our key takeaways, we can go perfect. Just to kind of summarize, define and understand those audiences, develop that data strategy, try to have some creative ideas on how you're going to evolve that fundraising strategy with whether it's different donation platforms, different communities, and then personalize as much as you can. Yeah. And then Angie, I will hand it over to you.
Yeah, I would just say that, you know, the takeaways apply, and even the prior slide applies to whether you are a small, a medium, or a large nonprofit. You know, we all have the things that we're good at and the things that we're not good at. And I will tell you one thing that I have learned over time is that it's more than the classic play to your strengths. It's make sure you're surrounding yourself with people who bring those other strengths to you, whether it's your vendors, whether it's showing up to these webinars, you know, et cetera. The other thing I would say is, because I think there's a question in the chat, and I'm just going to go ahead. It was in there in the very beginning where somebody said, I'm going to paraphrase it. I'll probably get it wrong, but basically somebody said, I'm just trying to figure out my donor segment audience. You know, where should I start? You don't have to boil the ocean immediately. You can actually start with the basics. Who are those people? Why are they giving to you? When are they giving to you? And I don't want to say that RFM is ever enough, because it's not. Because if you're just with RFM, you know, and for those of you who maybe don't know what I mean, it's recency, frequency, and how much somebody's giving. So monetary, you can never get to that personalized engagement, and you can never get to that, you know, platform level knowledge. But you need to start somewhere, and every little, you know, data point that you stack on top really does matter. But to the point that Krista made earlier, don't go out and do an overlay, because you don't need all that data, and then you'll just be overwhelmed. We actually did that. Somebody on my team did an overlay, and we ended up with like 28 new data points.
Wow.
And nobody uses it because we don't know what to do with it. It's in the database, though. Let's just say we can run a report on it, but nobody's using it in your strategy, in their strategy. So I would just urge all of you to, no matter where you are in the process, always be thinking about where you can go with your channels, where you can go with your audiences. And you're going to have to actually, the channel development over the last 5 years has been significant. And you're going to have different channel strategies that layer on top of your supporter strategies. For example, we know that in certain channels around Giving Tuesday, it's best to actually communicate right around the Giving Tuesday day. So Black Friday, Cyber Monday, I think there's a crypto day in there somewhere as well. And, you know, with certain channels like email, you really need to communicate very, very close to that moment around Giving Tuesday. However, you know, I saw my first Thanksgiving ad on Facebook the other day. And so certain channels are moving further out and start talking a lot earlier. And other channels, you will lose people if you start sending text messages about Giving Tuesday, November 1st, you will lose the impact of using SMS for Giving Tuesday. So it can get complicated really fast, but as long as you have the basics down and you understand when your people are giving and to what channel, that will keep you started.
That's a really good point, though. Timeline being different per channel.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wonderful. Carly, I don't know if we have any other questions. I'll pass it back to you.
Yeah, we do have a couple questions here. One being, how can I raise donations for your nonprofit? Well, there's a ton of ways that we just discussed. And also you can contact us at the Giving Block. We are happy to help you do that. And then someone had a really good question about all the noise for end of year. You know, I feel like a lot of the times donors are getting hit left and right with different appeals. So how can a nonprofit really break through that noise and stand out?
So I have what might be a controversial answer for you. And it's an answer that we battle on in my team every single year. At CARE, you know, we feel like we get the best results, and we're an international relief organization. So if you're going to say you haven't heard of us, but if you know about the care packages or have ever sent a care package, we're the founders of the care package from World War II, right? And so you do know us, you just don't know us in our modern day form. But we find it best performance comes when we can tell a story that is very personal and back it up with imagery and make it authentic. And what that means for us in international relief is that we're not only focused on how horrible the situation is, we can talk about the benefit of some of the care programs that have helped people, et cetera, especially because the majority of our donors will never see the problem that their money is working on, because it's in another country, obviously. However, y'all, the holiday giving season has become so fundraising tactic heavy that we have found that our best creative, that is normally very storytelling heavy, will not work as much as a match or some kind of fundraising tactic like a countdown clock before the end of the year closes. So I almost hate to say this because it means that we don't have to tell why. We just have to have a really great tactic. But it's actually what is the difference now? People are scanning their emails. They're looking for those really great opportunities to give. If you don't know what I mean by a match, it's the classic 2x, 3x. If you give before midnight, a donor is going to match your gift up to 3 times or up to a certain dollar amount. Those are the things that are breaking through in the holidays. I sort of hate it, to be honest with you, because it takes me away of what I want to do, but it's really the truth. So make sure that you don't get, I can't believe I'm actually saying this, make sure that you don't get so mission focused that you forget the things that the people who, you said it yourself, it's a very cluttered space, that the people who are sorting through 100 emails that they get from all the charities that they've engaged with or communicated with or donated to, that you don't miss the opportunity to get their attention. If it's email, it's a subject line. If it's direct mail, it's the outside of your envelope. If it's SMS, it's probably MMS with a picture, things like that. So make sure you've got something that will get their attention. And then those fundraising tactics are really critical at the end of the year.
Don't forget to play the game, right?
Yeah, I mean, I hate it, but I mean, we have to be honest about these things. This is the one time of the year that seems to matter the most. People.
The beauty of that, Angie, is that your website has all the meaningful stories and right. Yeah. And so when someone wants to go take the time for that, it backs everything you're doing.
Yeah. And a lot of people, I mean, you've had in your first slides earlier, the number of the percentage of revenue that comes in, not only in December, but often the last week of December. A lot of people save up really hard-earned money to donate at the holidays. And so the matches, and they can get complicated, but don't let them get complicated. The matches are some of the easiest ways to get that done. Even if you're a small organization, go to a major donor and ask them if they'll be willing to match donations for the last 3 days of the year.
Yeah.
If you're a big organization, you may have a lot more opportunities than that. But everybody can find a way to do a match. And that seems to be the one thing that gets everybody's attention because they have saved up their money and they want it to make the most impact.
I will give a plug to a different partner that we work with a lot. If you guys think about peer-to-peer fundraising, one of the players in that space is Classy. They, besides their product, which is wonderful and everything they do for peer-to-peer, are probably one of the best end of year giving resources. It's just something they offer to the community. But if you're looking for more ideas on getting creative, or I don't even know how to start with a plan for this, which might be a little late for this year, but check out Classy's website. They have an amazing, amazing library of resources.
Thanks, Kristen. Yes, we at the Giving Block have some amazing resources as well, but I have seen some of Classy's resources, but we have blogs, resources, guides. We're going to be sure to send all of you, when we do the recording, resources for end of year as well. And then we do have another question for a nonprofit that's never segmented before. So what tips do you have that would be a good place for them to start?
You know, if you've never done any segmentation, I would actually start with RFM. It's and I know that sounds like old school, and I got gray hair and I'm old. But it's true. If you've never done any segmentation, that's the first place to start. And what that means is you want to look at your donors across those three pieces, which is how recently is somebody given to you, like 0 to 12 months, 13 to 24 months, et cetera. How frequently do they give to you? Are they a 1 time a year? Are they a 2 time a year? Do they give 5 times a year? Small dollars? And then the amount piece. That's probably because at minimum, what that's going to help you do is create your version of your donor pyramid, right? It's going to help you understand who are the people that you really got to get back at the holidays if they haven't given. And you'll be able to then tailor your strategy based on your capacity, how many staff people you have that can actually do the fundraising, et cetera.
Fantastic. All right. We do have one more question. I'll go ahead and type an answer back from an attendee, but I think that pretty much sums up everything we wanted to cover. This was an awesome webinar. Thank you so much to Kristen and Angie. Again, we will send out you resources as well as this recording in the next couple of days. And one plug for the Giving Block, we do have a special going right now. If you want to get signed up with us by October 31st, we will be offering the platform for free. So that's pretty exciting. I'm going to see if I can launch a poll here to see if, let's see if I can find it on my screen because I'm not seeing it pop out. But if you would like to hear a little bit more, go ahead and put your name in the chat and we'll go ahead and send you an email. But other than that, oh, here we go. Let me find the poll here. I'll launch it. Here we go. Thank you all so much. And hopefully we provided you with some great insight on how to work a little bit more efficiently end of year for strategies and engagement.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.